Paul basically read.
There we go.
Okay, I just want to welcome everyone to the March 11th Finance Committee meeting. Our chairman, Mr. Glavy, is unable to make it tonight, so I will do my best and lead tonight's meeting. I guess we'll just jump right into the agenda. First item on the agenda, Facilities Assessment Working Group update. Bonnie, Mike, where are we going with that? What's the...
I know that the committee has been meeting. I don't have too much of the information because I haven't been meeting with the committee. I know that they are sorting the types of repairs and maintenance projects into different categories and then prioritizing them within those categories. I believe that they are meeting this week.
We're meeting Wednesday.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay. And we'll provide, a further prioritized list of projects. I know it's
First thing we attempted to do was to put some order into it so we can actually start putting the priorities together. So we looked at categories first. First category being life safety. Second one was code compliance. Then the buildings envelopes, buildings systems internal, external or internal finishes, and then grounds and site issues, and then IT and security. Once we've established those, we asked two members of the committee that from PMBC, since they have all the information, using those categories to fill in under each one of those categories the items that are up for 2014 to 2015.
Right.
And then once we had those at our next meeting, then we would prioritize those under each one of the categories. So that's where we are.
Okay.
Brett, did I miss something?
No, that's it, absolutely right on. We've got the $450-ish thousand that you gave us as a target, and the list is many times more than that, but we're going to try to come back with our best cut at what we should spend that 450 on for the next fiscal year.
So we do have the list as far as for 15? Is that what, the 450? Is that already?
Not yet. Tomorrow, we'll be going through the segregated list. What Bill and, I don't know the other gentleman.
Rich and
Richard.
Steve Moore.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve. Right.
Steve Moore, yes.
Right. Got together and categorized all of the line items into the 7 categories that we came up with, and that's what we're going to look at tomorrow, along with the PMBC's recommendations as to what they think are the top priority items that we should look at, and then we'd bring that list forward.
Under code compliance, there's one that really stands out, and that's the kitchen issue here in the
Right.
townhouse. So that'll be one of those that we'll be looking at.
Okay.
At the risk of broken record, how do we, how are we incorporating increasing maintenance into all this? I mean, because it's sort of generally accepted that we're not doing enough maintenance on capital. This seems like a good time to try to address that.
Well, there's
Since we're taking a systematic approach.
there's only so many cookies in the cookie jar. My feeling is that it probably is worth putting a plank in the financial policies that says that, at least on an annual basis, facility maintenance will be addressed. And whatever we have money to spend, however we decide to split it up. I mean, this year, we're going to spend in the neighborhood of $1.3 million on capital projects of different ilk. Okay, so $1.3 million, $1.4 million. Of that, $450 or so is going to be coming off that list that the capital committee is looking at. But whether we'll have that much money again next year, because a fairly sizable piece of what we've been spending capital on comes out of the undesignated fund balance.
Right.
This year we have a pretty good snow year,
Right.
so we're not likely to have quite as much money coming out of that for next year, for 2016, I guess it's 16 spending.
But there's
So-
only 3 more months left in winter, so we should be okay.
Yeah, right.
bad.
We're like halfway there.
Comes in April around here. So but I agree with you. I think looking at the policy and making
Excellent.
sure that, that there's a plank in that policy that supports this. And the other thing is, there are a number of buildings in the town that are not in the study, not even on the list.
Right.
So the list is longer than what we have. I don't know how much longer, I don't know, but it's longer. So we'll have to look at that going forward as well.
Thank you.
I mean, I apologize, I don't know as much as what's going on with the facilities, but the 450,000, like, where did that number come from? Is that just a
Well,
estimate?
Bonnie
We looked at, Bonnie made a first cut through the list of capital items that we had set up for FY15 in our 10-year capital plan.
Right.
Right, I remember seeing it.
And looked
right.
at those that must do, like rolling over the cost of police vehicles, those kinds of things that we normally always do on a pretty much annual basis.
Right.
And then at that point deducted that from the amount of money we were going to have for capital, and it came out to,
Actually, what I did is, when I looked at the fiscal 15 recommendations, it equaled 453,000. And so I dropped that number in as a starting point.
maintenance?
Yeah, if you add up all the 15 items, it's 453,000.
So that's where it came from.
So I grabbed it, and then
Okay.
realizing that, there's 13 items in there, there's 14 items in there, and then there's 15 items in there. So I said, I've got 453 carved out, tell me what it should be spent on.
That makes
the-
sense.
The kitchen code issues were not on the list. So assuming that we need to do that, just to bring it up to code, we don't get anybody hurt, then some of the projects that are on the maintenance
recommended list,
recommended list are going to have to come off, just like every other capital list. So that's what we're going to sort of wrestle with tomorrow evening.
And that one has another layer, because once we do that, then there's a commitment that they're staying there, right? That we're not building something else or moving someplace else. So that, I mean, that's another layer. In terms of fixing the kitchen, right?
Yeah, there's no viable plan anywhere for
Okay. Of doing
building
anything
a
else anyway?
separate senior center.
Okay, all right. I didn't know how much that was still in people's minds, that something like that was going to happen.
It's always
and so we're
in
not
some
gonna be-
people's minds, but it's
Okay,
so far down the list of
Okay,
things that
okay.
we
Just wanna make sure-
need to do.
before we fix the kitchen, that somebody's not going to next year saying, but we're doing this, so, okay, great.
Brian,
All sounds good then.
maintenance is not on this
Any
list.
further discussion on the facilities assessment?
Capital, not.
Thanks, lots of good work.
Okay, yep,
Nice
sounds
work,
good.
nice job.
Looking forward to hearing more from you folks. We'll move on to the snow and ice update. We briefly kind of get into that. I'm curious to see where that hits.
You actually have a printout here, just as of today, where the snow and ice account stands. Just as a reminder, we budgeted in two different areas. We budget the appropriation, which is $200,000, and we budget a deficit of $450,000, a planned deficit. And we do this every year. The reason we do it is because once you put it in the budget, if you don't spend it, you can't use it for other capital items, you can't use it anywhere else, you can never reduce it. So that's why it's a two-pronged approach. So as of today, of the budget of $200,000, we have spent $316,000. We have the authorization to deficit spend. So we've used $116,000 of the $450 that we've budgeted. This is low because we have materials invoices that are coming in this week. And we have not paid out the snow and ice stipend payments for the DPW or the highway employees. That'll be done at the end of the season. So, we know that we're going to spend another 20 in stipends. We know that we have materials. It's, probably easily another 100,000 that's out there
There's snow on
today.
Thursday of some sort anyway, right?
So, I'm cautiously optimistic that, we'll operate within the budget that we have, the $650,000 total. But,
So
we're
with what we
monitoring it.
know, we're north of 400,000 already.
Yeah.
And heading for $500,000 probably without, okay.
So we don't have 400,000 coming around next year for.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus also the roads are taking in a special meeting.
Yeah, potholes is another piece of this, right?
The repair and maintenance
Yeah.
budget for roadway, in previous years, we allocate about $100,000 out of the roadway plan for crack sealing and pothole fixing and, in prior years, we've spent, maybe $60,000, $70,000 because the roads haven't been that bad and they do maintain them. This year's been horrible and I'm expecting more than, the 100.
Spent that on Foster Street to the train station.
Right.
Yeah, it's brutal.
But
We
those,
have more frosting and freezing coming, so it's
Yeah.
going to be more.
And it's
yep.
tough for them to make the repairs when there's standing water on the roads too, so they can't, and the pothole's there, but it's full of water and you can't fix it, so.
They're doing a great, everybody, I think, in town.
So when
they've
Jimmy
done a
runs
fabulous
out of the
job on roads,
100,000,
Given the winter.
he stops?
right.
He will come back and, see what our options are at that point. We could authorize more spending out of the roadway budget, but he won't do that without consulting.
Without coming
everybody.
back to the selectmen, okay. But that would eat into what he can do for road maintenance and improvement,
So
okay.
we'd have to do a full review of the roadway plan.
Right, okay.
Just as an aside for that, he's looking at maybe having one of the bids available in maybe May or June. Is it Magog?
Beckhill.
Magog. It's one of the major roads, I can't remember the road now. It's too
Well, it
many.
may not be there anymore if we wait until, June. It's getting pretty bad.
Was New Estate Road on?
New Estate is in the design phase also. We've got some major roads in design.
Right.
We've got three, so a lot of work coming up.
Is there a process for asking for the town for some emergency fixes? I mean, I live on a little dead-end road. It's probably the appropriately last on the list, but there's a chasm to get out of the road now.
Okay.
I mean, is there?
There's not a process or anything for it, like we have about 100,000 allocated for roadway maintenance, which would include crack sealing and fixing those types of things. So I would get on Jimmy's radar, I mean, if you're not already,
Yeah,
and let him know that it's there so that he can try and,
just take a look at it, just,
yeah.
yeah. I'm sure there's 100 other roads that just have
Just
the
trips to
same
Dawn
thing.
once before, you know, then you see Jim. You go to Dawn once and you see Jim, and then you tell him what you need. Things happen.
Brian, I don't think there's a process for inside deals. Your prioritized list.
I don't think we're
completed
asking for
first.
inside deals. Considering that our road was last paved before World War II,
Right.
actually.
We agree on that.
Actually. If that's an inside deal, I'm doing it wrong.
I can show you he has one.
Yeah.
He's really good about being responsible.
Oh, he's the best, no doubt, no doubt.
I also just gave you a reserve fund update while I was printing the report. So you have 108,000 remaining in the reserve.
We don't
fund.
have any tonight, though, right? On the
Nope,
reserve fund
no
transfers?
requests, no requests. I just wanted to give you an update. You haven't had any activity in a while, but the only one was for the veterans benefit.
No legal fees? We have that
I
on the
don't have that. I mean,
in budget?
We're monitoring that. I'm waiting for the bills to come in for the month, and I'm sure we'll be
You
back.
could be sure.
We'll be back.
Yes, it seems like it's, every year we...
It's always a March issue,
Okay.
so we'll be back.
And the veterans' benefits are looking okay with this, and
Yes.
we wouldn't expect another round or unless something happens. We're okay?
Not unless the caseload,
Really spikes,
Caseload's building.
is it?
is it? Okay.
Yeah, just on the reports. I mean, the reports typically lag a little,
Yeah.
behind, but he's tracking on target.
Okay. Okay. So we don't have any reason to think he'll be back, and if he is, it'll be a caseload issue.
Yeah, it'll be
Okay.
tied to a caseload, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. Next on the agenda, the FY15 budget projection update.
So I provided a memo that I had given to the Board of Selectmen, and I would address the same to you tonight. Basically, it does provide the detailed budget document behind it, but we are currently trying to close a budget gap of anywhere from $300,000 to $550,000, depending on where the
The
school
school's due with
appropriates.
the circuit breaker? That's
Right.
big.
Correct. So, just again, just to refresh your memory, the school department requested a budget of $17,450,000. And to meet that budget appropriation, they proposed using $500,000 in their reserves and requesting a town meeting appropriation of $16,950,000. According to the DESE website and the circuit breaker funding that they will receive in fiscal 14, they will actually need to spend $769,000 in circuit breaker funds. That's a requirement of DESE that monies received in 1 year must either be spent in that year or in the next, by the end of the next. The town of Littleton, for the past 10 years, at least since I've been here, has always treated circuit breaker and school choice funds as monies received in 1 year. We know what it is, and then we plan on spending it in the next. It's a good budgetary practice.
Right.
You're spending what you know you have. If there are 9C cuts mid-year and they cut circuit breaker funding, you can adapt and adjust. So that's why we do it. So, knowing that there's $769,000 that needs to be spent, I have the budget set at a lower appropriation because I took the $17,450, backed out $769, and put the draft recommendation in at $16,681,000. So there's a lot of discussion going on about that. I did provide the superintendent today with the information from the Department of Revenue, which is also attached. This is the auditors and accountants year-end letter. If you look on the back page,
They give you any guidance on what to do?
they tell you exactly what to do.
Okay.
And it requires that, let's see, so you can only have in the account at year end, the maximum amount you can have is what you received in receipts for that year. You can carry that forward into the next year, but it must be spent. If it is not spent, it must be closed to the general fund.
To the general fund.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
So you can't build up accumulations in that account.
And I have a story to tell. The same thing happened in the town of Wayland in FY11.
Okay.
The schools had, I think it was $400,000 in unused circuit breaker money from it was over a year old, and the town took it. That was it. We had no
I
ifs,
mean,
ands, or
we're
buts about it.
ordered.
Yeah, and that's what they were supposed to do, so. Be curious to see
So-
what happens with this.
So just for clarity, because I want to, because we're meeting
Yep, this is it.
tomorrow. With the 769 and your figure of the 16,950, that still nets out to the total amount that had originally been asked for.
17,450, yes. It does not reduce their budget, it just takes the different buckets that it's coming out of. It does not
Right.
reduce their spending plan.
Well, yeah, it
Very
reduces their
important point. Well, it's a very
appropriation,
important
obviously.
point.
It reduces the town.
Appropriation of the
portion, town
schools, right.
appropriation towards that budget.
Right.
But it keeps the budget intact at the 17,450,000.
At their requested level. Okay.
And I just want to say, because we're going to be talking.
Meeting tomorrow, right.
Right, so I see, you know, what I want to lay out tomorrow is, you know, there was a certain amount requested, and that was deemed to be enough, cool. Then we find the extra 269, and to me, there's three logical choices. Reduce the town contribution by that amount, still leaving the total what it is, which still meets mission. Reduce the amount contributed by reserve funds, but still keeps the total achieving mission. Or, you know, take the extra 269 and do more, and then hopefully tell us what the more is for.
Right, but what's going to happen if you do the more? I mean, that's one-time money. What are you going to do come FY16?
Exactly, and that's the
You have a
conversation.
$270,000 hole to fill.
Right, and that's the conversation I think that we need to have starting tomorrow.
Right, well,
And there's still the fact that we're still in a deficit in terms of the town budget, so we still have to.
Yes.
deal
Because we
with
don't
that.
have the money,
Right,
it's
we
the
don't-
other
it's not
thing.
like it's like,
Yeah.
right, who's going to spend it? It's like
Right.
it's not there, so we have to come up with it someplace too.
And I
so.
know that you mentioned spending less of the reserves. They don't have the option of spending less of the reserves. They said that they were going to spend $500,000, they must spend $769,000.
right.
So they don't have that option.
Okay, all right, fair enough. My question, I mean, they've had circuit breaker for as far back as you can remember. Has this ever happened before? Have you ever noticed a year's worth of money
Yeah,
getting
it's
rolled
just
over?
in the past few years that the state has kind of come forth and Sullivan, what's his
Yeah,
name?
Jay Sullivan, yeah.
Has provided some more specific guidance about circuit breaker. There were a lot of districts out there that were accumulating circuit breaker funds. A couple of, you know, wealthy districts that kind of used it as additional reserves. And he found some towns had 3 and 4 years' worth of reserves tied up in circuit breaker funding. And he said, if you're not going to spend it, I'm not going to give it to you. So it's just really in the last 3 to 4 years that this has been, you know, an item. So I sat down with the superintendent today and we had a really healthy conversation about it. And so I think he has a good understanding.
You
of it.
feel that Kelly understands this, and he can articulate that to
Send
the
us
school
alarms,
committee.
God knows we need it.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
you know, circuit breaker's always been Jay Sullivan's little baby as far as he's concerned, and I'm pretty sure they do an audit. Every district gets audited every 3 years on where they are with circuit breakers, so I'm sure a few years' worth of audits have, you know, come up with
What
all
they should be
these
doing.
issues with money just kind of hanging around for years after year.
Okay.
Okay.
So aside from that, you know, again, if we're at the figure that I had holding in there, we've got about a $280,000 deficit. If it's at the higher amount, it's about a $550,000 deficit that we're working on. There are a couple of things that we're still monitoring. One that I'm actually pleased to report is the health insurance premiums. We just got the premium increase for active employees. We haven't got the retirees yet. But the active employee increase is lower than anticipated.
What do you, like 10%, what do you?
I had a 14% increase in health insurance
Okay.
budgeted, but it wasn't just rate, it was enrollment increase, because we've
Okay.
got people being added on.
What's
faster.
causing that?
You know, I think some of it is there are private employers that are able to push it. There are private employers out there that will say to an employee, if your spouse can get health insurance, we're kicking you off. And they can do that,
Probably give them some
but I
sort of
can't.
incentive, too.
Right.
To go out and get it on their own.
So we've seen, you know, out of, I don't know, we have 340 employees. We had a 26 employee increase this year.
Wow.
So it's, I mean, they're significant.
Wow.
So when will you have a better feel for the incremental employees?
In April, that's when the open enrollment process is conducted. So I'll have, as we go through the next couple of weeks, I'll have better and better calculations. Right now, I can reasonably comfortably say I can probably take $100,000 out of what we have. So that'll close that $270,000, gap a little bit. But I need, within that appropriation for health insurance, I do keep myself a reserve for additional employees. And I need to monitor that because we added more than I had reserved last year. So, it's
So
an
what's a
ongoing.
normal year? This year was 26 and a normal year is?
I budget 20,
Losses.
so,
Still about whatever.
Yeah.
Third higher than.
yeah. And usually at 20, I'm okay. This year was, we had a big increase.
But these are people, not necessarily new employees, you're saying, but people adding on. At some point, you're going to hit a limit where people are added on, like where they're going to be added on. It's not going to continue like that,
The other
right?
issue, it's not just new employees or active employees migrating in, it's retirees. So as employees retire and go on our retiree insurance plan, they're replaced, maybe at the same level. It's not like you're adding staff,
Okay.
but now my retiree count goes up and I have to pay for an additional body.
But at least we did the policies a couple of years ago, so that you had to be, an employee for a
Yes.
while.
How many years to
You
be
couldn't go
covered,
work in Acton for 19 years and come here for 1 year and then be on our retirement.
Right.
Right.
So thank God we did that.
Fix that, right?
Right.
Okay, all right.
So,
Just we know, yeah, I understand.
So the rate increase for active employees is 5.5%. So that's great, thank God. So as we get a little bit closer to April, we'll firm up the reserves and, what our true body count's going to be, and I'll close that number out. But the other thing that we're monitoring is state aid and local receipts. I still have level funded state aid. It's ominously silent from the state right now. I mean, when the governor came out with his version of the budget, it was dismal. There were no increases programmed anywhere. And the legislature had indicated, yeah, we don't support that. We'd like to fund Chapter 70 at least at a higher level. We recognize education as, is an important component. And then I haven't heard anything else since then. So we keep pressuring. The Accountants Association is pressuring for information, but we're not getting anything yet. So I'm still holding at a level funded appropriation. Even with that, if state aid is level funded and my assessments increase, I could be behind the 8 ball. So we're going to have to.
And when did the file numbers start coming out for that?
I had cherry sheets in November. They can
Wow.
do it whenever they want. Typically, we won't get them until July. I'll get new versions and maybe better information, but I haven't received final cherry sheets before July in a
Just be
while.
best guess when we go forward with the budget.
We normally sort of take a shot right before town meeting and say, yep, we'll take a bet on it, and if it's bad, then we'll have to address it in the fall.
And last year.
So you just plug it basically so it's balanced for town meeting, then?
No, you don't have to go to town
No, it
meeting
doesn't have to be
balance, and we
balanced.
didn't last year.
Okay.
We went last year with a $100,000 deficit, like this, like, I think state aid's gonna come in, I'm pretty sure it's gonna come in, but, if it doesn't, we're gonna be back in the fall for cuts. And it did, so we were fine, but,
You can go in a little out of balance.
Right.
100,000 is one thing. You can't really go in a million, It has to be.
No, but, within reason.
You wouldn't get
I-
bond ratings like this anyway.
yeah. And, if you go in too far out of balance and then you have to make cuts in a fall town meeting, you're halfway through the year anyway by the time you implement them, so it's better to be proactive. What else are we monitoring? We are, state aid, local receipts. I'd like to wait until the March 31st collections come in so that I have 3 full quarters, mostly because I get my excise commitment in March. And that's a big component of the local receipts that we get here. We get about $1 million a year, so, depending on the activity level of people buying new cars, hopefully people bought new cars.
Are we budgeting for another special election?
Probably will be. The town clerk is going to come up and present her plan for filling the vacancy
Oh, right. Jenna's
at the
position.
selectmen's level. So that will involve another election, I'm sure.
Right. What does an election cost?
I want to say 4,500, but
Okay.
it's a ballpark.
Okay.
It's not allowed to go with the major election, right? It has to be separate.
No, it's too late from,
Oh, not
there's a timeline
So it's not that they can't be together, it's just we missed the time window.
Missed it by like a week.
Yeah.
by like 2 days.
What is the timeline? I'm curious. When do they have to file that?
100 days or
100 days? Oh,
Yeah, I
10
think
so.
days or something? Yeah.
I think it is. yeah.
Keith
Yeah.
sent.
Well, it may
Keith
work
has
out
got
to be,
a whole-
but our problem was that when we knew we had an opening, we didn't have enough time between that and when nominations close. When nomination papers have to be in, we missed that by like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, Keith had a whole timeline on his blog,
Yeah.
but this May is too soon. Next May, well, I don't know, arguably too long, so.
Right.
So let's budget for it.
Okay.
That'd be something. New growth we're monitoring, I have 600,000 programmed in there, it's a very aggressive number for us. I'm hoping that there was enough steel up for the Market Basket building on Great Road to justify the growth, but we'll be.
So has
tweaking
New Growth
that.
been 600 the whole time? Have you kind of
I-
down on that? I thought I heard something about, has it been 600 for a while, or?
No, it's been 600, for a year, because we knew that this project was coming online. Traditionally, we don't budget at this high,
Right, it's much
you know.
lower, right.
But we've been monitoring, we were hoping to see a little bit more steel in the ground as of January 1st, but, we're working with Roland and.
Weather didn't cooperate either,
Yeah, very, yeah. Brutal
You know,
winter.
The past couple of years, our new growth projections have not been at that level.
Right, like 100 or something
More like
thousand.
100,
yeah.
yeah.
Right. Right.
So we'll keep an eye on that. And the collective bargaining agreements, all the town ones are locked up through fiscal 15, but the school department is, undergoing bargaining right now.
They've done
so-
June, right? It's June?
September? I think it's September.
Oh, September, yeah,
Yeah.
they have a, right.
Yeah. So, those agreements are going to be important to monitor and do the fiscal impacts correctly, just to make sure that things that maybe are not viewed as monetary, like time off, are actually calculated into, fiscal impacts, so.
So we're going to end up paying something.
Right.
Given,
So
right.
get that in the back of your mind, that there's going to be a piece of money that we have to come up with somewhere.
Well, schools have 269,000 they can put on the table.
It's one-time money.
I know. Just kidding. All right, I guess we'll move on to bond rating update, which.
Yes.
Happy news.
Yeah, very good. So we did receive, that the surprisingly happy news from Standard & Poor's that we received a 2-jump increase. We skipped over AA plus to AAA. It was a surprise. I mean, we were not expecting it. We asked for a rating increase last year, and they declined to give us a rating increase, so I was not as optimistic that we'd get one this year, and was pleasantly surprised otherwise. So this is the highest rating that a municipality can get. We're in a very exclusive club, I think. There are, I think, 30 communities or so, some 30 communities in the state that have.
So would this be like if, you able to go out and refinance debt?
We look at the option of refunding debt every year.
Well, this is obviously gonna.
Yeah, I mean,
affect
this
that,
will be
right?
part of that calculation, so if the rates, are low enough that we can refund more debt, we will. We refunded debt last year.
Right,
And
right.
we were able to save some money, so we do it every year, just
The
as a
rates
matter
are
of.
already creeping up, so.
Right.
Whether there's a benefit there or not, I don't know, we'll see.
I mean, we'll get a lower rate compared to everybody else, we'll get, the
Right.
lowest rates around, but the rates are going up, so.
And even with the good news, they did give the admonition to.
However.
Don't, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Don't
small print?
stray.
Last page.
Yes.
However, if we fail to maintain a very strong budgetary flexibility and liquidity, we may consider negative. So it's like,
Yes.
Yep.
And they'll come down faster than they'll go up, so.
Right.
They put a lot of weight on our financial policies, not just having them and having them reviewed, regularly, but the fact that they are followed, and they look for those things in the financial statements that we provide them. So they want to make sure that what we have in writing, we actually do. And they look at them every year, so. Yeah, it is.
Positive reinforcement,
It is.
we like it.
It is.
Like a little kid, right? Good job. Way to be.
I know. Like I said, I can only go down
Yeah,
from
but
here.
Nowhere to go now.
I know.
AAA plus, right?
No, it's good news. Like I said, when you look at the other.
Congratulations, obviously.
Excellent news.
Bonnie, you and your team, congratulations, obviously.
And it's the finance committee. I mean, you guys started this trek down towards getting these policies in place in 2007. And, they're working. I mean, we've been upgraded, regularly since that. And that's a tribute to you guys, so thank you.
Good team you're calling.
It is.
Looking forward to our next meeting with the Financial Policy Subcommittee. I don't know when that's going to happen, but
Find out when you're gonna.
Paul, if you're out there, schedule our next meeting.
Well, but it's item 6 on our agenda tonight, so.
Oh, geez, well, we don't want to jump the gun
Yeah.
here, all right.
That's why you're not here.
Yeah, that's why he's hiding. All right, so I guess back into the school budget update, do we have more to talk about on
No.
that? I mean,
You know, the school committee did send out the invitation for their
right, okay.
hearing
yeah.
on the
Public
13th.
hearing on
Thursday.
Thursday,
Yeah.
yep, right, exactly, Thursday.
And we have a conference, we have a meeting with them tomorrow. And we went back and forth, 1 to 3, I think it's 2
Yes,
now.
I think it's a 2. We went 1 to 3, now back to 2, so
Okay. Yep.
it's 2 o'clock tomorrow.
I made sure the file actually opens. I haven't had a chance to
Okay,
really dive
all
into
right,
it. but
good, test it
we should
out.
both- We should both do that before.
Yes, right, get us ready to go.
Yeah, that's at 7 o'clock. the hearing.
Yeah, so the public hearing, Thursday, police station, 7 o'clock. So looking forward to that. So now we're into the financial fiscal policies discussion. I don't, Brian, you want to talk about that?
So, I had sent a note to the whole committee listing a couple of things that I thought we should talk about and, at the pleasure of the board, maybe take action on. So one of them was I thought we ought to take a position on the whole fire station funding thing. That's one. And then I listed a number of policies that I thought we should adopt. And I'm taking the position that the inter-board policy group is wonderful, and that doesn't prevent us from doing our own policies, and that can be folded into that. So, okay. So let me just read what I'm suggesting. So there's the fire station funding, taking a position on that. Then, so what I said was, as a policy, in considering the use of monies inside the levy for capital projects, the following factors should be included. And say what we do with them, we just include them, they should be addressed. A, some percentage of capital requests that are deferred each year, in fact, have to be fulfilled in later years.
Right.
And as Steve pointed out, often at a higher expense. So even if we're saying, we're only, we get this many requests, we're only going to fund this many, we have to be cognizant of the fact that some percentage of the ones we didn't fund are going to come back next year. It's not just we just don't do them. So that just, this is not rocket science. This is just, I think
But how do
it's,
we avoid that? I mean, we have a 1.375 million budget to work with capital, and we've got $3 million list. I mean, we obviously prioritize it, but there's always going to be items that don't make the list.
well, but in looking, and a lot of these policy things got driven by the whole discussion about the 10-year plan with the fire station. And, I don't think any of us would say, oh, we have enough money. I don't think anyone would say, with more planning, we'll have enough money. But we should at least be cognizant. If every year we got a request for $1 million and could fund $500,000, but $100,000 just oh my God, really had to go into it, we can say $500,000 all we need. But you really need the 6. And whether you have the 6 or not, it's a need, it's accumulating need. As we're doing our projections, I think it's just prudent to be, to include the real numbers. We could say, we don't have the money for the kitchen, but, at some point you gotta do it,
Well,
so.
what about the capital stabilization fund that we put 190 or 200,000 into last year? Should we have spent that on the things that we passed up on, or should we have put the money in the stabilization fund?
Well, I don't know, your committee's coming up with the policies for that, man.
We voted as a committee
Right,
to
right.
put 200,000 in the stabilization fund, and now, I don't.
I guess
should we have
you
not
can't
have
always
done-
fund everything, even if you had
Yes,
the money.
exactly, right.
You
I'm
you
just
can't
saying-
just be a wish list and everybody gets what they want. It's just not how the world works, so.
All I'm suggesting is that in doing long-term planning, we pay attention to those items that we defer that we know are going to have to come back and get spent. That's all. That was A.
Right.
B, when considering the amount of capital requests expected each year, a multiplier for inflation should be included. it wasn't clear to me that that happened in the last, when we were just talking about the fire station. So, I mean, again, that just, I mean, of course we should have a multiplier. And the third one is explicitly, headroom should be allowed for uncertainty, headroom should be allowed in our planning to account for uncertainty.
What do you base that on?
Well, we have, one of the ways we do that is through this committee's reserve fund.
Right, good point.
That's one of the ways we do it.
Right.
If you're looking to make that larger, or are you looking for a different line item, or?
Well, I guess, again, just going back to the whole fire station discussion we had, we basically had a 10-year plan that said, yep, we've already allocated all the money for 10 years. And one of the arguments against that plan was, well, you're not leaving any room for, there's no headroom allowed. So I'm just saying, let's cast that in, in our policy that we explicitly ask for headroom. Okay, and then the last one, and this maybe, this sort of is a, so those I think are just sort of bread and butter. That's I don't know. I think those are bread and butter. This other one is perhaps a larger discussion, and we've put our toes in it a couple times, and so I'll just read what I have, is large capital items over $1 million, and you can adjust the number or whatever, pick your number, should require a ballot vote regardless of how they're funded. So this doesn't mean that you were requiring a debt exclusion to do big items. But if we agree to this policy, it would say those large items should be decided at a ballot vote as opposed to town meeting.
Well, I mean, something that comes to mind from my time in Chelmsford was the fire station over there in Chelmsford. They tried to do, I don't know, 2 or 3 overrides, and the voters in town said, no way, and then town manager was clever enough to get it inside the levy, and they got a fire station. If they had that fiscal policy, they wouldn't have a fire station. So, I mean, that kind of...
And it sounds like the town said no several times.
Right. I agree. But it also, I don't know.
We have a new town manager?
No. I mean, so it's... But I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether... that's just an example. Something I thought of, that if we had that policy, it kind of ties the town's hands. It doesn't kind of give them any flexibility. I don't know whether we want to do that or not, but...
Well, that's why I just wanted us to discuss it. So those are the... So fire station taking a position, a couple, what I think of bread and butter numbers, and then this large policy about balance.
Well, I think that the one difference between what you described in Chelmsford and what Brian was trying to describe is he's saying whether it's inside the levy or outside the levy, if it's north of some dollar amount, pick a number.
Right, he said $1 million, right?
Or whatever.
Well,
Then it's a significant enough impact that a larger group than the traditional 4% of the voters who come to town meeting should be opining on
Right. I agree.
that much money. So I think that's a little different from what you were describing, because it was an override, and then get it in under the levy. This is a little different, but interesting for discussion. But
yeah, even if you build a fire station or whatever, even under the levy, it's not like that's not going to impact the citizenry. Because if you build it under the levy.
Right.
And
Everything else is...
then
right.
everything
Right.
else goes to hell in a handbasket.
I agree, right.
I mean, you're not doing things that a large percentage of the population
Right.
would like to have seen done.
Right.
So, yeah, when you've got $1 million, I think is probably too small. But when you're doing significant building projects,
Right.
$3, $4, $6, $8, $10 million, whether you've got the money to do it under the levy or not, yeah, I agree. I would like to see the townspeople vote to yes or no.
Okay.
I think we owe it to them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Henry Crystal, Mill Lane.
Yeah, Henry.
I'm interested in the Chelmsford because I'm 76 years old, much older than you, actually, and I
Okay.
know a lot of history about Chelmsford and their fire departments.
Okay.
They've had in north of town, they had one, they closed it.
Yep.
They've had a long history of adding and subtracting fire
Right.
stations.
Yep.
And I think we need to consider that when we see the manipulations that might be taking place to build a new one. I mean, the town has been, really had a lot of satellite things.
Oh, right,
And for us to talk about them intelligently in here, like, they really needed one, and the town manager did the right thing by circumventing the public. I mean, I don't think we should be saying that, because we don't know the history of fire stations in Chelmsford over the last 50 years.
Right. Right, I agree 100%.
All right.
We don't know what the justification is for it.
That's right.
I was just using it as an example, as far as putting in this fiscal policy.
Yeah.
And some, just an example of something I was familiar with, and just how it would have been affected by a policy like this. So I agree with what you're
All right,
saying.
well, thank you for listening to
You're
my
welcome.
comment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Christie.
And I don't think anyone is, I don't think anyone is suggesting, and I am certainly not suggesting that anyone's doing anything bad or underhanded or whatever. And, I would vote for this, I just want a chance to do so. But I would absolutely vote for this, and I think the town would overwhelmingly vote for this. Could be wrong, but I think they would. I think they just should get the chance. I think it would be, it's just a spirit of the thing.
So you'd make that a town vote?
It would be at a ballot. It'd be the ballot, the May ballot.
Anything else on the list? Did we?
Well, I assumed there'd be more discussion, but then I'm going to make some motions.
Oh, yes.
Are we on the fiscal
I don't-
policy still?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
What I,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom Coughlin, Coughlin Road. Brian, when you talk about the ballot, are you talking about the May 17th, where the voting takes place after the town meeting, if you will?
Yes, yeah, the ballot, the
Right,
voting,
right.
what are
sorry.
the voting booths?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one thing I'd suggest is that this gets reviewed by Steve and Bonnie before we vote on it, because what I don't want to do is vote on a policy that we feel makes sense, that could cast any kind of a pall on the
Existing
the
policy.
town existing fiscal policy. I don't see where it does, but I'd like to make sure that,
Prudence, yeah.
we've got a AAA bond rating that I think we want to really jealously guard with. Whatever we do, we need to run it by,
Right,
if we
think it
need to
through.
run it by council, or we need to do whatever we need to do, we should do that, in my opinion, before we vote on it. We vote on something that doesn't dovetail properly with the policy that Standard & Poor's opined on, could cause us a problem. And
Makes all kinds of
that's
sense.
my only, I have no issue, I think it's a good idea. Personally, I think it's a good idea. But I'd really like to have an opinion on it before we vote on it, because of that one reason. That's the only reason.
I actually do have some recommendations within the agenda item for the fire station funding regarding policy amendments, so I can speak to that.
Oh, what he was talking about was, I believe what you were talking about was a general policy on taking an article or an item to the ballot, whether it was inside or outside the levy limit.
Not
And
specifically the fire station.
right, and if we can do that and not raise any hackles at Standard & Poor's, I think it's a great idea, personally. I personally think it's a great idea. But I want to make sure that we don't raise any hackles before we do it, that's all.
And I think that's great. I mean, the going to the ballot and the other thing, the A, B, and C for considering money's inside the levy, I'm absolutely, I mean, let's do it right.
Right, that's all I'm
That's our
saying.
whole gig. So I'm absolutely,
Yep.
yeah, let's do that. I would, having said that, I do think we ought to vote on what we think about the fire station.
No, that's a
another
different,
agenda item.
that's another
Yeah,
agenda
we'll
item.
get
and
to
I'm-
that.
it's-
Oh,
it's a
okay,
different-
okay, sorry.
Different
Sorry,
discussion.
go
But
Gotcha.
if-
Yeah,
Sorry.
so push
Push
those
forward,
ideas
We'll get to
to
that.
Bonnie, and
Yeah.
We'll start
Look at-
vetting them out. I mean, there's
look
some
at the current ones.
statutory references that.
Yeah,
we
that's
double
all.
check
Just
on
make sure we
fire
don't-
coats and-
Absolutely,
Zig when we should have zagged, that's all.
absolutely. Great. Love it. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, I believe, goes back to you, Brian, on the FinCom member reappointment discussion. I don't know whether we want to, as Paul left me a voicemail earlier today, I don't know whether it's a normal thing that we do as far as talking about reappointing finance committee members. I don't know where we're going to go on that.
I'm just, I just got a note saying that I'm, up for reappointment. The school committee has changed their appointee more than all the other appointing boards put together. So, makes me, a little nervous, and they get to decide whatever they want. So, but I'm just, very, very blatantly and selfishly suggesting that if the board wanted to send them a note saying I was doing a fine job, I wouldn't object to that.
I mean, we can voice our support. I don't know whether we're going to be writing letters, but
We've never done it. I
Yeah.
don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I have no problem with Brian being on the committee. We can each make a statement, yay or nay, or whatever you want to do, and put it in the minutes, and he can take the minutes too. I don't think we want to get to the point where we take a vote that says Brian's a good guy.
No.
I don't think that's a good precedent to set, but,
A vote of confidence in your ability to do your job here, yeah, you got it.
Okay, yeah, I'm just looking, that's,
And
I'm
you add to the
thinking,
mix too, because I think the one thing I like about this board is that there is a mix of people coming from different places with different opinions, and that really adds a lot, and this is what this board should be. So I think you bring an important element for that.
I was looking for.
Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify a point if I may. Last night at the selectmen's meeting, Chairman Glavy said there was going to be a vote tonight in regard to inside or outside the levy. Now, are you folks pushing that off, or are we going to vote on that tonight?
That's the next
Number eight.
I'm sorry.
Next agenda, number 8, we are going to get to that.
We're still talking about how wonderful Brian is.
No voting.
And anyone who felt compelled to write would be fine,
Vera?
Please?
Yeah, there's one in Town Road. I just want to follow up on that and say that, maybe it can be in the minutes, but I think it would be very nice if there was something in writing from the FinCom to the school committee regarding Brian's reappointment.
Minutes is
Oh,
fine.
sure, send a copy, or take a copy of the minutes.
I'm thrilled with the minutes,
Good.
especially since I don't have to write them.
We'll get these by
Tomorrow, by Thursday.
Is that BRI or BRY?
So I assume there's other people applying for that
I don't know,
position?
one never knows.
You are reapplying.
Yes.
You've made that apparent?
don't miss the deadline.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm up for reappointment this year too, so, but not by the school committee.
Who are you from? I know that, assessors, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have something you want to
Sure, yep.
Thank you, Chris Simone, Whitcomb Avenue. I just, as a resident in attendance, want to also voice support for Brian's work and perspective on this committee. And hopefully have that reflected in the minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Simone.
Any further discussion? Alrighty, let's move on to fire station funding discussion. As pointed out, I guess we're going to potentially make a vote on whether we're inside the levy, outside the levy. Any discussion on that, or
You want to summarize the discussion from last night, Bonnie?
Bonnie?
Good luck.
The votes of the non-vote, to rescind the vote?
I provided you with an update that I had given to the Board of Selectmen last night at their meeting. Basically, Steve Venuti and I, along with the rest of the finance team, sat down after the Standard & Poor's rating came out and really wanted to make a final push to have the board consider funding the station as a debt exclusion rather than inside the levy. There's a number of reasons for that. Our existing policies as they're written today highly encourage that all major projects be done as a debt exclusion. They do reference that unless there's an alternative funding plan identified, which is a little vague in my mind, and I have some recommendations about language changes directed towards that in the future. But in the past, since 2007, 2008, when these policies came to surface and were created, we have been funding the major buildings as debt exclusions. It does not prohibit us, if funding becomes available inside the levy, to apply that funding towards a debt exclusion. And we have a history of doing that. There's two projects that come to mind, the track and some of the Russell Street School debt. The track, there was an abundance of snow and ice money remaining a few years ago, and you might remember we went to town meeting and appropriated it towards the track project. It was voted as a debt exclusion. However, none of that funding has been applied as an exclusion towards the...
We paid it off, basically paid it off inside the levy.
Right.
Okay.
So when appropriate, we do take those measures. However, going forward, we know that there is this large delta in capital plan funding versus what's being requested and what's available. And whether you view, some of the items as a wish list item, even paring it down, there's still a large delta. We have just shy of $1.4 million in available funding this year. We had over $4 million in requests. Doing the maintenance projects and the regular capital planning within the levy limit has been an important component that Standard & Poor's looks at, and they reference in their rating review, that we have a 10-year plan, and that we update it every year. It's a moving document. It's a living document. And that we're doing this inside the levy to prevent these major repairs that need to be done reactively rather than proactively. So that being said, what we've been doing the past few years is using a portion of undesignated fund balance, which is a result of operations. So it's money that came in that we didn't budget and expenses that were not spent. So that can vary every year, but this year we're using about $800,000 in that funding, plus the debt service that has been rolling off since the plan was, or since the policies were implemented. So we have about $550,000 in accumulated retired debt service. So that with the 800 gets used every year to fund our capital plan. If we take a portion of the declining debt service and use it towards a major building project that's a 20-year note, it's going to take a considerable amount, $600,000, out of the capital planning that could have been done with that money, addressing equipment or infrastructure needs or anything preventative. And again, we know we have that big gap in funding requests versus available funds. So we just wanted to bring forward again to the selectmen the idea that, having this authorized as a debt exclusion will give us the financial flexibility that we need. It will not prevent us from funding, portions of it inside the levy as appropriate and as needed, if we can do that. But in years where we spend all of our snow and ice money and we have 9 C cuts and there are, problems that arise, we won't be handicapped by not having money in capital to go forward. So, the board did not vote to change its position at this time. They didn't say that they wouldn't, but they did not, they didn't change what they had voted prior, which would be to have it funded inside the levy.
What was the reasoning for that? They just...
They're still trying to make up their minds.
Nice, maybe they're waiting to see what we have to say.
Or after election.
Okay,
If I were them, I would.
okay.
The Finance Committee, if it weighs in on it
Yeah,
one way or
okay.
another.
Okay, that's
certainly.
fair. Yep.
And one of the things that I did reference as far as a proposed change to the financial policies is to firm up that language on, alternative funding plan. To state that, an alternative funding plan should be identified clearly. The use of grant funds. For example, if we got a grant for the library building and they paid 50% of the construction costs, well, that's something to consider. And maybe you put a funding plan together that incorporates that and any other available funds, and you show what the impact to the current budget projections would be by putting something inside the levy. Are you going to have to make reductions? You go through the analysis to do that. what effects would that have on the budget itself? And then what leeway would it leave us for unexpected items such as, influx of school-aged children going into the school from a 40B project, or, something else that might be, coming online.
Well, and that would be exactly, I think, where you'd stick the language of, and if it's over X million, you have to go to a vote, regardless of, you go for a vote for approval, not for funding.
Right.
That'd be the place to do it.
I think that's perfectly appropriate, but, when we'll check the statutory references, I think that's a good idea. So again, I think we need to keep tweaking the financial policies and keep in the good graces of Standard & Poor's and, trying to retain the status that we have now.
But beyond Standard & Poor's, the fact is, I think most of the people on this board just felt like the fiscally prudent way to do it because of the same reason Standard & Poor's is telling us, but because this is what we do.
And I would point out that in 2007, when these policies were first crafted, we were doing all capital projects from capital exclusion.
I
Every
remember.
year. So we did 8 years worth of
We had
capital
Don was
exclusion.
buying police cars for us.
Right, right. So by following these policies and grabbing that retiring debt service and starting our capital plan, we've stopped doing capital exclusions. We've grown the capital plan, every year. We haven't squeezed operating budgets ridiculously, and that we're able to maintain some type of undesignated fund balance. We just want to continue the work that we've been doing, so.
But if we were to fund it under the levy, was it like by 2020, our capital requests were going to be what they are now? Or what they were this year, 1.4?
The available funding would be
Same
as it
as
is
this
today. So,
5 years, 6 years out.
Assuming the
Nothing.
undesignated fund.
Right, that doesn't change, right.
right.
So,
So it could change.
I'm sorry, no, it's not related to that, but one of the other items that did come up in the discussion we had on this at our last meeting, and Steve was one of the ones bringing it up, and maybe one of the gentlemen over here, was the whole idea that the interest rates are going up. And so by holding this off, because we're going to have retiring debt, well, there's advantage because we have retiring debt, but we also, the borrowing is going to be a lot much more expensive if we wait too. So that's the other piece of this, is inside or outside the levy, and then do we wait, or do we just go forward now?
Right. If we go forward now, the 2012 excluded amount was the maximum that we've ever seen. And that was because we had the police station hit the levy, we had the Russell Street School debt hit the levy, we had the full impact of the middle school hit the levy. So 2012, the excluded debt portion of the levy went way up. And that was kind of discussed as, that's our threshold for pain. Like, we don't want to go back up beyond that if we can help it. So between 2012 and 2020, when we would place debt, if it was authorized in May of 2016, we'd build it and construct it, and then we'd place the debt in 2020. There'd be about $450,000, $480,000 of debt service payments that had fallen off. So you could probably manage that additional exclusion coming on without really exceeding the 2012 level. So the same timeline seems manageable. If you go earlier, then you're going to go past.
what was the 2012 level? What were we talking about as far as the figure on that?
In 2012, we had 2.1 million in debt service, annual payments
And how much was
outside the
capital? How
levy.
much were we spending on capital?
In 2012, I think it was probably the 780 plus 300,000, so about $1 million.
We've been sort of hanging right around $1 million for the last several years.
Yeah, we're up to the $1.3 million now, but it's,
So we were really on the levy at that point, right? What was it total, 3.whatever million? Capital plus the debt?
well, this is inside the levy debt.
Right, inside, right.
Right, and then we had, $1 million, I'm sorry, this is outside the levy debt, then we had $1 million inside the levy.
Oh,
So we
okay.
had like a lot of debt. So if you go from that level, the 2.1 million, in 2020, we're down to $1.6 million
Right.
excluded. So you could add, another building project in and not really go beyond that 2.1 million in annual payments. So if you're trying to keep that, not really exceed that 2012 level, then the same timeline would work.
Right. Barring nothing else happens.
Right.
Right.
So
I don't know where we want to leave it. I mean, someone.
I'll make a motion. I'll make for because, at our last meeting, our treasurer said the plan that the selectmen were considering, in his words, didn't work. Steve says it doesn't work. I believe it doesn't work. So, I move that the Finance Committee recommend that the fire station be funded via a debt exclusion.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Oh, I'll second the motion, but I want to discuss it a little more too.
Sure, I
Okay.
you're just asking where we were going. I said, that's where I'm going.
Okay, we motion and a second, but anything further to discuss, Alan?
Do we want to refine that to start the project in 2016 as opposed to 2015?
May of 2016.
Take that as a friendly amendment. Again, if you say that's what we should do, I mean.
That's fair.
No, I would like to see us do that. That we go with the timeline recommended by our finance team, because it makes sense to me, and that we do it outside the levy. Because that's how I, without reiterating everything I said the last time we were here, I lived with that $1 million rolling out of the monies we had available every year, and laying off teachers, cutting hours for every employee in the town side. I don't want to do that again.
And the one operating override, it forced us to the point where we got.
That exacerbated it also.
Right.
So I don't want to see us do that again. So yes, if we're going to do this project, I want to recommend it outside the budget. I want to give the townspeople the opportunity to weigh in on it. And I think we should go with our finance team's recommendation that we do this in 2016, not 2015.
Sure.
Steve McCurdy from the Fire Department. I just wanted to bring to your attention that in 2016, just so for full disclosure, the project is projected at 7.2 million rather than the 6.6 for today. Just so that is fully disclosed and out there on the table for this discussion.
And we'd avoid the 600,000 by, what, doing it this May or something? Or what? Is
In theory, yeah.
Right. That's the first I've
But
heard
we-
of this May, right? Or May of 2015? That
14.
14? Oh, okay. Okay.
We do, the project has not been fully designed, and we don't have bids yet. So these are just construction estimates from our.
Yeah, we're only estimating now anyway, so.
Right.
You get the bid design, and then they come up with the real estimate. It might be a heck of a lot more than 6.6 or lower than 6.6, who knows?
The estimates are tough to hit, it depends on market circumstances. The Russell Street School came in at, I think, 15 million, and we ended up with, 10. It was by the time we were done with it. So it was, it's just.
Right. You never know. Right. Mr. Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to divert for just a minute. We appreciate Brian Tarbox on the Voter Participation Committee. Your committee was kind enough to send him as your rep, and he's been a very big help for us.
Okay.
So anyway, put that in.
Put that on the vote.
Put that on number 7.
I'm mostly afraid of the inside the levee. And a recent example is the town of Groton, who has been struggling with inside the levee fire station that they started.
Right.
They got $400,000 being spent on the construction, and now they're in a bind.
Right. Schools are hurt.
Like the one that Mr. McRae is talking about, and they're saying, what do we do? They're gonna have a special election in a couple of weeks, April 1, to talk about moving the inside the levee financing
Right.
to 2.5. I guess you know about this. So this is something we need to avoid here. We don't, in 20 years, we're gonna run into that wall if we accept inside the levee financing. I mean, we like the fire department, we wanna support the fire department, we think,
I agree,
Fire
it leaves
station.
leaves you exposed for,
Question.
you know, unexpected increases, you know.
Yeah,
School
we-
department has an accounting issue of whatever, it is 200-some thousand, I'm not sure about exact figures on that, so it definitely does leave you susceptible to those sort of things happening if you fund it in such way.
I agree, thank you.
Thank you.
And I do think an important part of it is, even though you're saying it's going to be funded by debt exclusion, that we do have the option to pay for it from inside money, and we have a history of doing that.
Right.
So that really is a very compelling argument to go that route. You have the flexibility if you need it, but you still run a tight fiscal ship in the meantime. So it just seems like it's kind of a no slam dunk to me if this is the better choice, way to go.
Okay.
So I'd like to formally amend the motion.
I said a friendly amendment. I mean,
You want me to read
Yeah.
what
Well,
I
let's read
have
it, yeah.
and then correct it, because there's so many different things here. Okay. I wrote, Brian moved that the fire station go with the timeline recommended by our finance department and, finance department, and to go outside the levy. Recommend it
let me say,
outside the budget, and gives the townspeople time to weigh in and go with the finance committee's recommendation and do it in 2016.
let me try again.
We can limit that, go
Let me
ahead.
try again. I move that the finance committee recommend that the fire station be funded via a debt exclusion
Okay, be funded
By
by a
debt-
debt exclusion.
starting,
May of 2016.
yes, as per the finance team.
And we don't need the other
No, no,
reason.
Okay.
That's just,
And then,
Yes.
okay, and are you seconding it, Al?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Okay, a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Okay, so I'll scratch what I have
Ayes have it.
before.
Good.
Thank you
Nice,
for
very nice.
your support out there as well.
Yes. Yep. Thank you all for
Well, Paul must have.
your insight.
Yes, I think so.
This is a majority report, this is not a minority report.
Okay, next on the agenda, Finance Director's report. Bonnie, anything further?
A quick item, I provided you with a draft warrant for the special and annual town meetings. Again, this is a draft warrant. There are some articles that have been inserted by the selectmen and some that have not been inserted as of yet, or voted to be inserted. The warrant closes on March 21st, so we'll be back to the selectmen next week to have them do all of the final insertions of articles. Your recommendations, if you want them printed in the book, really need to be formatted by like April 10th, because we go to print, I think, April 18th. So.
No, we scheduled a meet again.
It's got to be before then.
We've got the date.
I don't.
We are scheduled on March 25.
Good.
So let's just.
Couple more weeks.
2 weeks from today.
Right,
Yep.
so on the 25th, we'll vote our recommend.
Right, we should
Okay,
make sure
so on
that
the
that's.
25th, we'll put that on our agenda to make our recommendations for
That's
town meeting.
that's enough time for you?
That's
Warrant
enough time. There
articles.
actually, I looked, there's a timeline in here too. Tuesday, April 15th is the publication deadline, so if you met on that day, if you emailed the recommendations to Keith,
Yeah.
you could get them to the printer by midnight.
Right.
It's just as a last minute if there's
Yeah,
something
hopefully we'll
that,
hammer them out
you know.
Can I
3 weeks before that.
Just a question, Henry, how does that, there's no, I'm trying to ask you a question about voter participation and the easy language stuff we do.
Okay, plain text.
Plain text, plain text. So this all meets our timelines as well? For getting, or this is no, there's no delta?
Upcoming May, we have, I believe we got a timeline that we can work with, yes.
Okay, because one of our initiatives, or town's initiative, I don't know whose initiative is, that the voter participation committee tries to make plain language versions of all the articles, so we can say, if you vote yes, here's what happens. If you vote no, here's what happens.
Follow that timeline.
Yep. Gotcha, thank you.
That's right here.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So if you look at the ones that have been checked, like each article is listed, and if it's a check mark, it's been inserted, it's been voted to be inserted. If it doesn't, then
Okay.
they have not formally done that yet.
Okay.
Do you want me to walk through the articles, or do you want to,
I don't know whether we want
it's, I
to
mean,
jump into this stuff.
There's nothing very different from what we
No,
looked
not-
at before, right?
nope.
Particularly controversial in here that you
Well, yeah,
want to
well,
highlight?
other than the operating budget, that's still kind of floating out there.
Interesting question.
Article 3.
Finance Committee operating budget is Article 3, it's always been Article 4.
I was just going to say that. Thank you, Al.
It has to be 4.
Yeah, it's got to be 4. I was just going to say, I was looking for Article 4. I thought I knew what article it was.
Don't
and
cross the
it's out of order.
streams, you know?
It's good for your brains, mix it up a bit.
This is obviously a rough draft, so.
Tradition has to hold forth here. Article 4 is the operating
Must
budget.
It is.
It's the only
one's
only
set in
hammer
stone.
we
Pass that
have,
on.
is Article 4.
I will formally make that request, so that,
Count thee to 3, count thee not to 4. 5 is right out.
I
put the
don't
water
know
department first, and then we'll.
Yes.
if anyone has anything else to discuss, any of the articles come up to mind. Capital Stabilization Fund, Article 9.
The capital
We-
items are drafts, those are just,
Yeah.
they need to be
Did we do
voted.
anything with the Capital Stabilization Fund? Did we,
I have
we go through our
earmarked,
capital list and
Yeah.
we recommend to maybe put some money in that?
I
again?
already, it's required that we put at least 1%.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yes.
So I put in
Good
like our best of it.
policies.
I know, and it's already in there.
Policies,
so.
yeah.
Yes, Mr. Simone?
Thank you. Is this draft list of articles a public document available for us to review?
I am not sure if it's posted on the website as of yet. It's certainly a document I can send it to you, though.
That would be great.
You could make your pencil change on Article 4.
Yeah, yeah. We know that one.
Big stamp.
You got the important things done here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
And it's not like Article 4 is in.
glad you're in charge here, Chris, you're doing a fine job.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Betsy.
But there's nothing on here that hasn't been voted by the selectmen in open meeting, right?
Everything that's on there, if it's checked, it's been voted in open meeting, yes.
There's a little check mark up there.
Yeah, yep.
Can we stipulate right now that Tim does not have to read Article 17 in its entirety?
They vote,
Yeah.
they've already
As printed.
voted Article 3 on this, which would be Article 4. They've already voted on that?
All they did was vote to insert it.
Okay.
So they, you know, there is, the warrant closes on the 21st, so they can vote to insert a capital plan article.
Okay.
The text of, and the details, which will be worked out through the.
Right, over the
15th.
next, right. Alrighty, I don't.
I mean, since we're agendaed to talk about this in detail.
Yeah,
next
well,
time,
we'll see this about 4 or 5 more times.
Yeah, so it will change.
Yes.
I just wanted to give you a heads up. that
Thank you, no, it's appreciated, as
Okay,
always.
that's good to have. Alrighty, that's, all right, I guess we're on to minutes. Do we have minutes?
Oh, Brian sent some.
Oh, yes,
Email
oh,
us.
yes, we do.
I sent
We had,
two.
we had 2, right? That's
Right,
right, I
be-
did
be-
review those.
Because another, because when I was at the voter participation committee, we got chastised a little for being behind on our minutes, and so I stipulated that we would try to catch up, and that
You know what
I would
that's
actually
like.
submit the ones that I took.
I know how bad that can get. I had to deal with it for a few years myself. So, where do we want to start? We got some like January or February or something like that,
I,
if I remember correctly?
I don't have, I emailed them, I don't have
You did.
printed.
Okay.
The joint meeting minutes has no date on it, Brian, so.
That was, yeah,
Yeah, and actually, Paul did mention on his voicemail earlier that I don't think he's had a chance to review it. I don't know whether we want to vote these tonight.
He's not here, let's vote him.
He's,
Yeah, we're here. No, I think we can do it. It's okay.
I'm just trying to find, yeah,
yeah, I remember.
Is it? Minute, okay. There was a 1:14 meeting and a 2:04 meeting.
Yeah.
That joint meeting is 2-4?
2:04.
Okay.
So, what was the other one?
114.
Yeah, 114, all right, I knew there was a January. Okay,
Move to approve the minutes of FinCom meeting of 114.
okay, I have a motion, and seconded by Fred to approve the minutes of January 14th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
You want to see the other one there?
And, all right, on to February 4th, minutes of February 4th. Do I have a motion?
I can't make it.
I move to accept.
Go ahead. You move.
Betsy has made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, ayes have it.
Now, who has them in order to send them? You will send them?
I will send them to you.
Oh, all right. And
I'll
then
give
I
you
will-
my copies if you'd like.
Great, that's
Yeah, why
even
don't
better.
she, if she takes a copy, then she'll have something to work with.
Okay,
Okay.
cool.
All righty.
And we, that makes us pretty
Pretty much
close to
current, I think.
caught up, yeah.
Yes.
Did you
And now
have
we're gonna be
another
caught up
meeting?
because we've
Did
got
you
a
have
plan now.
another meeting in November? I mean, in February?
No,
You only had one in February?
right.
How did we swing that?
Yeah, we went on vacation. like
Yeah,
you did,
well, yeah,
Did you go far away like I did?
Mentally.
Oh, okay.
we didn't have much
If you
for
weren't
agenda
going to be
items,
here,
if I
what's the
remember
point of our
correctly.
being here? Just make poor Brian have to take notes again.
I know. Brian, if you would send them to me, though.
I will send them to you, yeah.
Because then I can get them
Yep.
distributed where they're supposed to be.
Absolutely, will do.
Thank you.
Alrighty, I believe that does it for what's
And
on
are we
the
official now
agenda.
going forward? If you can't be here, we're gonna get it done anyway?
Now, as far as I know, unless something disastrous happens, I should be here at every meeting until we get into the end of June. Because then I'll be gone away.
Okay.
But up until, you know,
Okay.
Good, that's great.
We'll be
You're every
celebrating
meeting
a
except for the
successful
ones
town
I'm not
meeting
here.
at that point.
yep.
All right, that's, anything else to discuss? I think we got through
Motion-
everything.
motion to
I
adjourn.
have a- Yeah, okay, a motion to adjourn. Do I have a
Second.
second? Betsy, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it, and we are
We're
officially
done.
convened at
Quick meeting.
18.
That
Yeah,
was
it wasn't
good.
bad.